In part 1, we saw how to use shortcuts to automatically add and subtract 1 from a variable. But suppose you want to add or subtract some other number, like 3. So perhaps you have a line like this. Numgrapes equals numgrapes plus 3. If we just wanted to add 1, we could say numgrapes plus plus. But I want to add 3. So how do I write that? Well, there's a shorthand for exactly this. And to motivate that, I'm just going to take this text and copy it and move it over to the left. And then I'm going to get rid of the stuff to the left. And notice what's in the middle. Numgrapes plus equals 3. Well, let me pull these two lines apart. These two lines are identical. They both mean the same thing. Numgrapes equals numgrapes plus 3 is identical to numgrapes plus equals 3. Now I put a space around my plus equals, just as I put spaces around my equals and spaces around my plus. You don't have to, but you may not have a space between the plus and the equals. The plus equals is one thing, and if there's a space in there, it turns into two things, and then it doesn't make sense. So you need to write this together, plus equals. And numgrapes plus equals 3 is identical in every way to writing numgrapes equals numgrapes plus 3. But it takes less typing, there's less chance of making a typo, and it's easier to read. So when you do an operation like this, you almost always want to use the shortcut. Just as we have this shortcut for plus, we have it for minus, times, and divide as well. So let's just take a look at them. If I want to write numgrapes equals numgrapes minus 3, I'll do the same little typographical trick. I'll slide it over, I'll get rid of the stuff on the left, and break it apart. Numgrapes equals numgrapes minus 3 is identical to numgrapes minus equals 3. When you see minus equals 3, you know 3 is being subtracted from that variable. By the way, it matters that the minus comes before the equals. If you write equals minus, processing won't understand you. So it's always plus equals or minus equals or any of the others we're going to see, but the equal sign comes second. Just as we have this operation for plus and minus, we have it for multiplication. So let's go ahead and triple the number of grapes we have. The expression numgrapes times equals 3 is identical to numgrapes equals numgrapes times 3. And if we want to reduce the number of grapes we have by a factor of 3, then numgrapes slash equals 3 is identical to numgrapes equals numgrapes over 3. You've now seen all the arithmetic shortcuts that we use in everyday programming, and you will see these all over the place. They're widely loved and widely used because they save time and they make your programs easier to write and easier to debug. They're an advantage in every way except that you have to learn them, but you'll learn them fast. Here are all of the shortcuts we've seen in this video in one place. The four at the top allow us to either add or subtract 1 from the variable, either before we do anything with the whole expression or after we do everything. The four at the bottom let us add, subtract, multiply, or divide one variable by another, while keeping it all nice and short and sweet. To revisit our example from the beginning of the video, if we have a number of apples and a number of new apples that have just arrived into our inventory, and we want to add them, we can write this line, and it's absolutely perfectly good processing. Number of apples equals number of apples plus number of new apples. But using our shortcut, look how much nicer this is. Number of apples plus equals number of new apples. There's less to read, less mistakes to be made, and less ambiguity. And if we know that we only want to increase number of apples by 1, we can simply write this. And that has even less complexity and ambiguity. So these little shortcuts, the plus plus and minus minus, and then these 4 plus minus times divide followed by the equal sign, are used everywhere. You'll see everybody uses them, and once you get the hang of them, you will be using them everywhere too.